when I have a first meeting with a client, I joke and I'm like, oh, this is our first date. And they kind of giggle. And I'm like, well, I'm not kidding. Like, if we're going to be on a project for a year together, like, we're going to spend some time together. And like, I want to get along with you. So, we're just going to kind of get to know each other in this meeting, and then we'll have a follow-up one and then see how that goes.
So we have Mr. Chris Meeken on today. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks for having me.
Excited to have you. So Chris is the owner of Black Tie Group, and we've been fortunate to spend some time in person and now behind the mic. So glad to have you on.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, Contractor Coalition Summit was sweet, and like to kind of connect with you and Nick and the team. And yeah, it was cool to be one-on-one and just get to know everybody. It was great.
So maybe I'll ask you this then, because I know you are really big into relationships. That's going to be part of the conversation here, is how you built a network. You have your Marine background. So I know that's played into, organization and systems and training and everything that goes with that. I do want to ask you about how that's played a role in your business success. What made you gravitate or want to go to the summit and kind of be with your peers and be at that event?
I think I'm a firm believer in like the people that you surround yourself with will help you to elevate. So like, I get super excited when, even locally, if I can get together with a group of entrepreneurs or people that are doing well, and you put 5 of us in a room, and the amount of ideas that get shared in that short amount of time, it's like you could put, it's how you get a space shuttle on the moon. You're just like, man, I never thought of that. So for me to go there was like, okay, let's network and meet some of the best in the industry, and also see who else is doing what across the country. I mean, there was a lot of heavy hitters at the summit, and, I'm still in contact with a few of them. And, the idea around relationships is who knows what those may turn out to be in the future. It could be something regionally with you, or, Nick's kind of in my backyard, and, we talk often, and there may be a project in the future that he and I, connect on. So those type of things, although that seem quiet in the beginning, turn into snowball into things down the road.
It's funny you bring that up, because there's a couple points there. When you think locally, there's a builder here, Brady, JD. I've had them both on the podcast, Brady Fan and JD Dwyer. And what's funny is rarely do we compete. On occasion we have, but there's been a couple instances where we've had a client that they're like, hey, you know what? Brady's probably a better fit. AFT, on their side's a better fit. And it's funny how we kind of know whether it be certain, I don't want to say territory, but maybe areas of Phoenix. But more importantly, when you speak about just being around successful people, Chris, and how you pick up these nuggets and information and how that makes you better. One thing that I wish I'd realized early in my career that I do a lot more now is you and I have a lot of clients that have been very successful for a reason, right? That's why they're doing the projects they are with us. And I've found that when I speak to them and ask them about their business, about their systems and what made them successful, and it's interesting how they share certain things, even though they're different fields, and how it applies to us in construction.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the people that are successful for a reason, and some of it is systems, some of it could just be hard work, but that comes at a price too, right? So you look at these people that are doing really, really well, and you get to know them, and maybe spend some time with them, and you just realize, it may come at a sacrifice. We don't all have all the things. There's no unlimited amount of time. So if you're, working on building a $1 billion business and flying around the country all the time, like, you're probably giving up something on the other end, whether it be, personal life or, your health or whatever that is. It's difficult, and it's easy to look at someone that's killing it and be like, must be awesome, must be whatever, and then realize they're sacrificing a lot to get there. So yeah, I think there's a new appreciation for that and understanding the reality that comes with that.
How have you mentioned in your network, I know that you have a relationship with architects and designers and realtors. How has that community made impact for you just in your business growth?
It's huge. If you can start to develop relationships with, local real estate agents or a local architect firm, or, just have really good working relationships with your trades or people in the area. We talk about the cost of marketing and all those things, but if you can build those relationships, the marketing is almost free. So if somebody sells a house and they're like, "Oh, we love the house, we just bought it, but we want to redo the bathroom," and then you're friends with the real estate agent that just sold it. "Oh, I have a perfect guy for you. Let me get you in touch." And then they've already kind of greased that wheel with the recommendation, and that opportunity was created through a friendship or a relationship.
Now, with that though, what's interesting is I think a lot of people listen and say, okay, Chris, well, I know the benefit of having a realtor and they're going to think of me, refer me an architect. How have you found success to essentially get in the door and be top of mind and build a relationship outside of maybe just meeting them, passing by the networking event?
Yeah, I think some of that is, being personable and also being interested in what, they're into. There's so much about relationships. And I think about this like with first client meetings or meeting anyone for the first time. And it's like you kind of have to be a better listener than a speaker, and try to find some common ground, some common connection. And I think I do a good job of in any room, and it could be doctors, it could be elite level business people, it could be, you know, basic concrete work, but you can listen long enough and talk long enough and then kind of be like, oh, there's a connection there. We both like, basketball, or we both like flying, or we both like something around a thing. And then it's like you gravitate towards that and ask some more questions. And that creates, a deeper connection than just, hi, nice to meet you. And like, we don't remember each other's name or anything about them. Right.
It's funny you say that. Because I think about as you were sharing that, my experiences I've had as I've networked, with different, you meet some for the first time, and that common ground, right? Finding something in common is a huge part of that. You know, listening is really important. Engaging, asking questions, making them feel that you're really interested. Um, Even at that point where someone like you, Chris, is fairly outgoing, you can make a connection pretty quick. you know, what about after that first meeting? What are some of the steps you've taken to like continue that relationship and to not be over persistent, maybe overbearing, but at the same time, keep that channel open?
I think you just equally refer them. So if I have a client that comes to me and their first question is,
Mm.
do you have an architect? My model and your model are a little bit different, and um, I do like the direction and how you handle yours. So I'm definitely leaning in that direction. But um, I think when people come to me, it's like, oh, I have an architect for you, and I bring them to that architect. And then so when it comes the other way, and they have a client that's already hired them, and then they'll say, "Oh, we have a builder that we think would be a good fit for you," and then they make the connection. And then sometimes I just go in as a consultant to help, direct the scope of the job, because as you know, like some people want a 7,000 square foot house and then realize that's out of budget when they really need a 3,500 square foot house. And I can go in early and try to, direct them so that they don't walk away with a giant design that can't be built for their budget, regardless if I do it or not. Yeah.
How hard is that to have those conversations when you see something kind of going outside of the scope or the agreed upon budget, and all of a sudden it's escalating into something is maybe not be achievable, or maybe it is achievable, but that based on their goal set, they don't even want to get to that point.
Yeah. I think I try to be as transparent as possible. That's one of the things that I think has served me well in my model is I'm very easygoing. When I have a first meeting with a client, I joke and I'm like, "Oh, this is our first date." And they kind of giggle. And I'm like, "Well, I'm not kidding. Like, if we're going to be on a project for a year together, like, we're going to spend some time together. And like, I want to get along with you. So, we're just going to kind of get to know each other in this meeting, and then we'll have a follow up one." and then see how that goes. So I think um, in those meetings with the architect and the clients, I'm just very clear about, I understand what you want to do, but in all honesty, this is what we're seeing in the field, and this is what that's going to look like before you even pick a countertop or a finish. And, there's world of difference between a Lowe's $2 square foot tile and a, tile shop $30 square foot tile. And that's, way down the road, but you're already trending in a direction where you're overspending.
Now with the peer groups, going back to it, as you're thinking about, realtors, architects, designers, if correct me if I'm wrong, but you're in New Hampshire, right, Chris? And
Yes.
so
hmm
what, depending on your market, it is one of those peer groups, has it been more beneficial than others for you as you built kind of your brand over the last while?
Yeah, I think the architect has been great. There have been some really cool projects brought to me by, a couple real estate agents that I'm friends with. We're in a fortunate area where, we live around the largest lake in New Hampshire. It's, basically the largest lake in New England, and it's a destination for people from all over the country. We have a lot of second and third homes from California, Chicago, Florida, North Carolina. A lot of people summer here. So there's constantly, and there's only so much land. So people are now buying properties just to tear the houses down and then rebuild new ones. And in order to do all that, you either need shoreline permitting, Department of Environmental Services, an architect, engineering, all those things to get your, project done. So to be in that group and be, one of the, top few in the area servicing the lake with a good reputation, it's, all those relationships pay off.
So why Black Tie Group? Where's that name from?
So I've lived in this area since 1999, and I've dealt with all the clients around the lake, in my previous career. And the thing around relationships, I'll go back to that. But the thing around relationships with that is the groundwork I set working for those people in the service industry of taking care of them paid itself forward 15 or 20 years later when I open my own business and I can go back to those same clients that I had a good relationship with. And they're like, oh, we loved you when you were doing this. And, you always took care of me. And now that groundwork that I created inadvertently and unknowingly 15 years ago serves well now. So when I first started this, it was more of a concierge property management style business where I was just catering to the people around the lake.
So when you first started Black Tie Group?
Yeah. So it was black tie property and lifestyle management. So I was basically catering to people that didn't have enough time to take care of their property on the lake. Just give it, as we know, time is fleeting, and it's like they're on vacation. Why do they want to spend time maintaining their house, taking care of their property, filling their boat with fuel? Like just call me. I'll handle all that. You just come enjoy your 2 weeks or 3 weeks that you're here. And then when you leave, I'll take care of the rest of it. And that just morphed into doing a good job at that. And then, can you handle or facilitate, a deck or a dock or an addition or a kitchen? And then we've just grown in that direction more. I still will facilitate some things, but there's enough property management companies around the lake now that it's kind of, they can handle that, and I'm fine with not having any part of that.
I was just going to ask, because a lot of companies have been probably the reverse of you, right, Chris? That they start the construction company, they're building their arm. I had Andrew Patterson with Patterson Custom Homes way back when, and he made the comment in the episode. He said, it's like your tail gets so long as a builder, and if you're not maintaining this, so you don't have a warranty department, you're not servicing it, things come up. And so a lot of them will start a concierge service just to maintain it, so they keep your reputation up. Whereas you're coming the other side. And so you alluded to this at some point. So now, before we get into your company today, are you still doing a lot of concierge, since you started that way and you're now going into construction?
I am not currently, but I've had the request from clients to kind of go back that direction. Like, as you were saying, offer them something. And I know Nick's doing it with home care.
Mhm.
Um, I think if I could find a driver for that van and have somebody do it, I would definitely open it up. But similar to you, my quality is priority, and if we can't do it right, I'm just not going to do it. Um, so yeah, right now it's kind of shelved, but we'll see in the future if something does come back and when we're full circle at that point.
So, being that you're on the lake, I mean, priority most of your projects are around the lake. New build, remodel. Is there a percentage? Kind of how normal project layout for you?
I am probably 80% remodel. I'd say only in the past couple years have we started doing any full new builds, and that's been, in all honesty, probably a little bit of ego. Um, I, if we're breaking it all down, there's definitely more money in remodels regionally. There was just something for me about I want to build a quality home. There's a lot of spec builders locally just flying homes up that are okay. Um, and I just want to build a quality product. So wanted to basically open that door and took on a couple just to, see how it goes. And if there's a world where we can continue to do that while we're doing that, we're still doing remodels. Um, so yeah, it's just something we're dipping our toes into, but long term, I think that's a direction I would like to push, if we could find the right fit.
It's interesting because, and maybe help me understand the mentality a little bit, which is totally fair. I think many of us have. I think many of us get accused for chasing that shiny object in a sense that we love the chase, we love the sales process.
Mm,
Thinking of the company evolving to the next level, maybe the next project, maybe it's volume. I mean, there's so many different angles to it, but at the core, there is an importance there to understand what's in your wheelhouse, what you're good at, and to stay true to that. How is that process different from you working on remodels to new construction? And do you feel that's enhanced your understanding of your business? Has it inhibited? How does that break down?
Definitely a learning curve. I think, aside from ego, there was this local stigma. Like, there's a lot of guys that have been around here, way before 20, 30, 40 years before me. And they're the big hitters for custom homes. And I've been fortunate to be in the same room or to be looked at, against them for a project. And then, I feel great about that. But sometimes the feedback is, are you big enough? Do you have the experience to do these things? Like, you do primarily remodels. And I can educate the client to a point and explain, like, honestly, remodels are more difficult than just building a new home. If
Hmm.
I have to temporarily, support your house while I'm taking out an exterior wall and opening that up 20 feet, the amount of understanding of construction to get that done without the house falling down is way more difficult than me just building it. So we could easily build a house. We choose remodels because it's our niche and we're good at it. And then I was like, man, I'm kind of just tired of hearing that, that on top of, I know we would do a good job at it. So I'm like, let's, the next, kind of referral that I got. And I kind of started pushing it a little bit with my local lumber yard. And then it was like, yeah, we could build a house, and we've done, we're on our second one now.
It's incredible. So second build, and I think a lot of people listening can probably relate to that comment where you may be interviewing with a new client and they'll be like, "Hey, you've only done remodels." When anyone that's done both, there's complications to both. There's no doubt that with the remodel, there's certain points of the project where you have to be heavily engaged because there's a lot of Easter eggs you may find, right? A lot
Mm-hmm.
of little surprises as you're going through the build, and uh, there's a lot of coordination. It's not as easy as, hey, if I have a really good new build ground up, if I have a really good spec book, if I have a good architect, if I have a good designer, a lot of this is now just process and purchasing and lead time and coordination. as opposed to, and I don't want to say it's not technical, but it's just different, as you mentioned, than a remodel.
Sure. Yeah. 100%. And I think, to your point of the carrot or the shiny thing, I think as the more the better the questions are, right? So I start to engineer my year and kind of look at some goals. And if we're talking about bathroom remodels or kitchen remodels, and if I'm trying to get to a certain number in my year, and then I look at that, I'm like, oh man, that's 35 kitchens or something to try to hit that number, right? Or, we could build 2 houses and do 10 kitchens and we hit that number. So some of it is that. Um, and then looking at how long does it take to build that house? Do those numbers even work? Do we need, even if you sell that $1 million build, if it takes you all year to build it, then you really, didn't do all that well either. So I think we need to break that down by the month and realize, we should be out of there in 8 months to hit our numbers, or did it take us 14 and we missed? And then we've got to go back to the drawing board and reevaluate, what we're doing. And I think that's some of the learning curve right now, to your point, is logistics. Did we order the windows at the right time? Did we order the siding at the right time? And then you realize it's a 6-week lead and you need it now. Those things, or did you get the trusses delivered before the first floor was on? There's, little things like that I, can definitely do better at. And I own that, when my guys give me a hard time, like, how come we have trusses here and we haven't even put the first deck on? It's like, well, I didn't want them to be behind. And now, we don't need them for another 3 weeks and they're tripping over them. But yeah, those are all things, that are different from remodels. But yeah, I think there's a little less client interaction. I mean, I could go down a rabbit hole on the difference between, remodels and new builds, but to knock on someone's door every morning at 7:30 when they're in their bathrobe having a cup of coffee and say good morning and petting the dog, shaking hands with that's a lot of work every day for 9 months. New build, the guys come and go. They, I might have to stop into the site once a week or once every 3 days or when they need something, but it's not like I have to be there every single day and, talk about dust protection and why isn't the HEPA filter on and why aren't we sweeping at the end of the day. There's a little more breathing room in a new build than a remodel.
You made a comment though I thought was pretty fascinating, because you were saying, as I'm looking at goals and budgets and end of year, I'm kind of quantitatively looking at, this sale can cover this many projects. And so walk us through, because what's unique about that perspective as a business owner, maybe business owners are not thinking to that aspect of, without getting into specific numbers, but as you think about metrics and the KPIs that you're monitoring, and you may know, Chris, it sounds like, hey, I know exactly what my monthly nut is to crack, right? To cover my overhead to break even. I know what, how much can I bill to a job? What is my true overhead that's coming off my bottom line? When you made that comment, as you think about your business now, how involved are you in that financial planning aspect to understand sales to revenue and how that impacts, just your cost to run the business?
Yeah, significantly more. And I think I talked about it, with Nick, and I think the first 2 or 3 years, we did what we did out of accident. We grew, we doubled every year the first 3 or 4 years, which the numbers were so small, that's easy to do. As they get bigger, and then you start to break things down by month or by week, and you start to employ more people, it gets a little bit more complicated, and it becomes more of a logistical thing for me. And that's always something, it's something I'm looking to work towards, with your business model. And we've talked about that, where it's more of a managing things. Right now I just keep hiring people to do things that I want done. Like I just started an electrical division. I hired, bought a van, hired a master electrician, partnered with him. Because it's been so hard to find um, electricians and controlling schedules. So I'm like, well, now we'll just start doing foundations. Now we'll just start doing this. But it seems that there's could be a better model where you find a good, concrete subcontractor, you find a good framer, you find a good sider, you find a good whatever, and then you just kind of move the pieces around to make it all work. I would love to that's something I'm working towards right now is there a world where I could manage building an entire house without using my crew that I own? So that's my next little test I'm going to try to do is like sell another house and then try to just sub the entire thing out without using any of my guys and see, if that's doable, without sacrificing quality. And that's right now my biggest fear. I get a lot of inquiries from people like, hey, we've got a framing crew, we've got a plaster crew, we've got to insulate. I'm really nervous to hire a framing crew and then just spend 2 weeks fixing mistakes or being out of code. Like, we have a really good reputation with the 2 or 3 local building inspectors. And I'm not sure how to make that jump yet, but yeah, that's where I'm leaning towards.
Well, I will say there's no doubt that skilled labor is tough to come by today. It's a lot different than it was pre-COVID, much different than it was pre-recession, and of course 20 years ago. We've kind of seen a decline in trades out there. But my question maybe for you, Chris, when you said one of your concerns is to have a framer come in, and are they going to perform to the same quality? Hit the code regulation. What would be different? And maybe I'm challenging you a little bit on this as opposed to
Yeah.
your own guys. Like what makes a difference about when you have your own crew, are you overseeing it personally? Is it because you've trained them? Is it because you have protocol and systems in place? Otherwise, it would strictly be management where if Chris still has that same eye and understanding, if you're out there in the field as a super per se managing it, what's the difference to essentially get to the same quality from a sub that's not you and self-performing that is you?
So right now, I've got, a couple good, I guess, call them leads. I've got guys that are paying attention that have been with me, between 3 and 5 years. They know what I expect. And that's sometimes through trial and error. I think it's an interesting position that we're all in where we just have the critical eye, right? And I try to explain to them, like, I don't want to come here every day and just pick out all the things that you did wrong. And then over time, if we start to fix those, then I won't have anything to pick apart. Like, I'll just walk on and be like, yep, that looks good. Like, it's, how to do this. We don't do this. That we, put caulking down before we put the seal down. We're trying to do this new thing. Some of it's innovation, some of it's, stuff we pick up in training, and then we just start to incorporate it into how we do things. How do we build a header? How do we, whatever those things are, and then we just kind of have a staple that gets checked on. And I think to your point, with a sub crew, I would have to be there more for sure. The other option is I take one of my guys that's really good and I park him on that job site as a super, and he walks around and tells them how we want things done. And we've had that conversation, and that may be how we try the first one.
Yeah. I can assure you that if you were to take a more managerial role, not that you're not managing your jobs, but if you're subcontracting off your work, as you mentioned, that one of these days you're going to have a whole house that's not without any self-performance. The projects that are successful is, like I tell my team, we're always playing offense, and by that, site cleanliness is a small example.
Huge.
If you don't start from the beginning, it's impossible at the end, right? And really what it comes down to when the trade partners come on site is just, hey, having a team meeting quickly. Here's the cleanliness I expect. Here's the quality, right? Here's going to be the process. Here's the communication channel. Here's, you kind of go through the whole job site layout and you walk through everything so that they know clearly what your expectations are. And of course, it's backed by subcontracts and estimating and everything behind the scenes. But at the end of the day, if you're setting these clear expectations, ideally, and then as it's being installed, if you're checking it and checking scope and specs and making sure it's installed properly, ideally, you're in a position where it is done right now. The reality is we know that we have to constantly check them, as you
Mm-hmm.
and I know. But let me ask you this, because you mentioned that you have, out of necessity and quality in the brand that you've built there with Black Tie Group, Chris, is that you mentioned, hey, recently, even an electrician I started, and there's a partnership. How do you create a partnership, and how have you done that, with some of these ancillary businesses that are feeding off the parent company, but are still in a beneficial way that, hey, you trust this guy to be a partner and you've set it up so, we can make this successful?
Yeah, the funny thing about that is he was my project manager for the past 4 years with another company. So we already had a working relationship with that. And then he had a falling out with that company. And basically, he knew that I was, for the past year, I had been kind of hinting around that I was probably going to do something. So as soon as that fell apart, he called me and was like, "Hey, are you still thinking about trying to do something?" And I was like, "Yeah, 100%." So I think within 3 days, I had a van and like working
You
on
move
getting it
fast.
lettered. Yeah, I'm like, "Let's go." Um, but it started off as a handshake deal, and then I basically gave him a salary, like a guaranteed salary for the year, and then starting in 2025, he'll end up with um, like 48% ownership. I just wanted to keep enough of the thing to be controlling interest so that I could control the trajectory of the business, assuming things aren't going well. Um, but it's highly motivating for him because he's been in the industry 20 plus years and has always worked for somebody and always kind of had a ceiling. So now here's a chance where we can grow it as much as we want. So if he wants 2 trucks on the road and 4 guys, then and just wants to go back to doing, managing projects and sales, there's a world that can happen in the next couple of years. And now he owns, a giant piece of it. So, the long-term benefit for him is huge. And then he's also highly motivated or incentivized to do well. Because if it grows, it's only going to benefit him. And if it fails, then that's also on him.
So if I understand correctly, this is someone that was working as an electrician, had good experience. You have a good relationship. And this is totally understandable. Someone that may not have the business acumen of starting a company and getting a truck and, you know, setting up the LLC and insurance and, payroll and everything that goes into it. Whereas you have this skill set, you already have most of these things in place. You bring them on, there's some skin in the game, there's an incentive, there's a game plan where he can increase ownership and essentially be responsible, but now there's some profit sharing. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's, of course, both of your thinking, I'd imagine, as you're getting, this moving along so fast.
Yeah, it's the benefit there was multiple things where I already had jobs lined up. We had those 2 houses, we had some other remodels. So the work, and we talk about some of the coaching I've had is like if you've got a runway of jobs ahead of you, then you can be a little bit more selective about what you have coming in, or you can try some things different. And we already had enough work stacked up in front of us just from my current projects that I wasn't worried about keeping him busy. And then what actually happened is we took off pretty quick. And now through his relationships also, we just hired a part-time master for 3 days a week to help keep up. So, we're going on 2 months in. We started January 1st and we've got, already a demand for some more help, and we could use, probably a decent apprentice at this point. So it's looking good. And I think that's understanding your market. And then the other benefit for us is it adds value to our builds. Because we are the controller of that product also.
So end goal, when you look at, a company such as electrical company you set up, is the plan to ideally self-perform all of your projects? Do you plan on bidding to other contractors? Kind of, how do you see that scope changing?
We would definitely bid to others. I have no issue. I mean, similar to you with speaking with your other local builders, I've got a good relationship with, 6 or 7. We even have we call it a builders banter breakfast. Like every couple months, 5 or 6 of us will get together at someone's house and just, talk about what's going on and how things are going, things we're seeing, maybe talk about people that we've hired or fired, or, try not to reuse bad employees or whatever that is. So if any of them needed, an electrician or needed something, I would definitely be open to doing that. Yeah, for sure.
Do you think they'd have any pushback saying, "Hey, Chris is our competitor now, we're giving him more work"?
I don't know. I mean, I doubt it. Similar to you, we would refer things to other builders depending on schedule and fit. A friend of mine has a really successful remodeling company locally, and he had a client that he had a big project that got extended or fell in his lap, and he had something lined up for a client, and it got pushed. So he just said, "Hey, look, I don't think I'm going to be able to meet your timeline. Why don't you reach out to Chris and see if it's something he can get done for you?" And that turned into a working project. Like that one's under contract, and we're going to start that in the fall. So
now with accounting, do you keep accounting in-house or do you outsource it?
right now it's in-house. It's on my list of things that I need to outsource as these things happen. Yeah. And then, tearing them apart, peeling them apart. Once in the beginning with this partnership, it's like, all right, we're just going to keep it in-house, roll them into normal payroll. But yeah, by 2025, I'm going to have to figure out a way to peel that business out of this one and turn it into its own entity, books and all. So yeah, those are big questions for, people that I was actually going to ask you about that. Like, do you have partnerships outside of, AFT? Obviously partnered with Buildertrend, but are you looking to be more diverse in your portfolio?
Yeah, really good question, Chris. And so when you mean more diverse, do you mean as far as setting up like other trade partners as you've done, when I talk about outsourcing accounting or like other, real estate ventures? I mean,
Yeah, like business. Like, would you want to be part owner or own other companies? Like, you look at Nick with like owning part of a cabinet
mhm.
company, or part of a marketing company, or part of a something. Are there things that interest you? Um, Obviously you're plenty busy with AFT, but for me, I look at that as like single line. And if that was to kind of get dried up or slow,
Mhm.
like what else would you want to have out there running that is pretty, you know, stable slash diverse?
You're 100% spot on. And, I think a lot of my stuff, I don't speak about a whole lot on the podcast. And so here you are, Chris, to ask me and we'll break it down. But, I think proud of you, and I'll answer your question here in a second. But when you were speaking about starting the electrical company, it's someone when I don't say you understand business, but you have a pretty good understanding of your business, Chris. So it allows you now to leverage that and to start another venture. And as you mentioned, you kind of are creating some bandwidth there, right? Very similar to me. I love business. I think most of this podcast is circled around business, with the different guests I have on. And so to answer your point, yeah, over the years, I've been involved in many businesses, including it. So AFT is one that most people know me for, know us for. We invested in energy drink company. We have real estate in town. We're looking at. I've invested in other subcontractors, just as you have.
Hmm.
The podcast. I mean, there's other platforms. I'm a huge proponent. I think for you and I that have we're not super old, but we've lived long enough to understand, construction is not the most stable industry, and it's been pretty healthy for a while, but that's not always the case. And there's these up and downs, and you have to have brick and mortar behind you, and you have to have other assets so that you're not just, in other words, a paper contractor, that when there are no jobs, it dries up. Well, how do you keep your people busy? How do you retain them? How do you have diverse opportunities? And I've always looked at it where I have really good and talented people that work for me. So I want to make sure that we have opportunities for them to grow in their career. And, that means in leadership, that's in financially. And so, yeah, from development to other companies to, that there, there's a lot. So I think you and I kind of along that way. There's a lot of things happening inside and outside the business that, strengthen each other and allow us to be here for the long term. Because at the end of the day, I want to serve my clients for the years to come. And the only way that's going to happen is if my doors are open and, we're in a financial position to do so.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I obviously the glamorous big projects, help with your reputation and getting your brand out there. But, in the back of my head, I'm like, man, at the same time, like you've got enough bandwidth where you could be building, a small development or a small, few houses in a community that isn't to the uber
Mm-hmm.
wealthy or, so I'm like, those things. And I think, my next kind of move that I've been working on is, with an investor. And do you want, could we start doing some reasonable spec houses? We're in a unique area where the outside money has raised the cost of buying a home in this area to the point where like locals can't really afford it.
Mm-hmm.
And we've kind of like all kind of moved out away from the lake proper, I guess, like within the couple miles of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, the question is like, can we build an affordable house that a local could afford? And right now I don't know that that's even possible. But it's definitely on my radar of something I would, interested in trying to see if we could do. And I think that's also part of these experiments with, and don't take that word the wrong way, with building these houses is like, I'm tracking the costs very tightly to understand where is there money to be saved or shaved, in production or in purchasing to maybe be able to build an affordable house. Because right now, 2,000 square feet with a 2-car garage on an acre is like $950,000. And like, that's just not, sustainable for, my kids to buy when they graduate, or, even a local person that's a framer or a plumber or something around here. It's not attainable.
Yeah, I mean, not to digress to this, but I think all of us have a concern. I mean, we've seen the cost of labor and material, and and with labor specifically, we understand how minimum wage and rates have been changing over the years, and there's no sign of that going down. If anything, politicians are lobbying to increase, which affects cost, and you factor in interest rates that are high on top of that, and then it becomes a pretty high number for those looking to
Mm.
break in. And so I think it's a pretty complex issue that you and I will be dealing with the rest of our careers about cost of construction and um, building. And I know that can be a limitation and something to consider when going into development, as opposed to a custom build a suit.
Yeah, and I think some when a lot of, not a lot of, but there's a lot of builders in our area. There's a lot of 1 or 2 people in a pickup truck. There's no necessarily you don't have to have a license in New Hampshire. You can just throw a ladder on your truck and go to work if you wanted to.
Is that amazing?
So yeah, I know. I mean, in some ways, isn't it? Because you could, no matter what, you could make a living. I mean, but to your point, yes, that they put a lot of weight on the building inspectors to make sure that things are getting put together well. But there's a lot of things that get missed too. So, I think that goes back to the big push in education and some sort of formalization and, training and bringing back the trades. I think though, part of growth in I had talked to you about it before, but with these higher end clients, and obviously your business model of handling higher end people, it comes definitely with some added responsibility. And people will ask like, oh well, you haven't been around that long, how have you grown so fast, or how do you get into that market? And I think there's definitely, I put some investments in early in appearance, with making sure we had newer, cleaner trucks, we had clean trailers that were not, doesn't necessarily have to be wrapped, but decent advertising. There's You can't show up to a $4 million house in a $12,000 truck with rusty quarter panels leaking oil on their cobblestone driveway. Like, you're never going to get that job. So it's like you've got to, you have to have the appearance of wanting to be professional if you want to appeal to that client. And that comes with a lot of expectations around, like you're saying, cleanliness and zip walls and dust barriers and HEPA filters. Like, you will be called out, and they will hold you to the fire if you don't, make good on your promises. So there's some serious levels of expectation to meet if you want to, play in that arena.
Do you feel that's worth the investment? I mean, how has that changed kind of maybe your appearance there in your market by having, a good brand, clean vans and clean, brand of vehicles?
It's big. I mean, we have a good presence. People, locally, back to the real estate agents and other people in town. It's a small community. Especially there's an island called Governor's Island on our lake that, has some of the highest concentration of, wealth in our area. And we do a lot of work on that island, but some people locally, builders, don't want to deal with it. They're just like, yeah, we're not even going to go on there and deal with the, requests and all the things that come with that. And I don't mind it. It's a little bit different. But I think in the end, like, you just treat them with respect, and typically it goes both ways. I mean, you can get some of them that are really difficult, but for the most part, I have had good relationships with a lot of the clients, and that word of mouth has helped because they tell the next person two doors down, and they tell the next person two doors down, and then all you have to do is take them to your last project. And a lot of times my clients are out of town or out of state, and they'll just let me bring them. Like, hey, can I bring over somebody from down the road? They want to look at the kitchen I just did for you. Oh yeah, no problem. The door code. Like, just bring them in. Blah blah blah. We look at the kitchen, and the client's like, oh yeah, this is exactly what I want. And then that it's like your own calling card.
So benefits, drawbacks. I mean, as you're working with the high-end clientele, which it sounds like you have most of your work there around the lake, pros and cons to just the clientele and the product you're putting out now.
I think, meeting expectations. I'm pretty hard on my guys about house prep. I think the things we've gotten hit on the most early on were just, to your point, cleanliness. Like, people expect, things to be, it's paying attention to items. Like, oh, we're doing something in the bathroom. If they haven't put all their stuff away, then it's on us to, maybe put their toothbrush in the drawer, put their, whatever, put everything away, either for them or while we're working on it. And then if, put it back. We do a lot of, video and pictures before, because if they have a whole picture, like behind you, you've got all your stuff out, and it's like, if I was going to remodel your office or do something and all that has to go away, we video that whole space, take
Smart.
pictures of it, and then when we're done, we put it all back the exact way. Every picture goes back where it was, the basketball goes back where it was, all those, like, those little things pay dividends. And they also will get your ASS handed to you if you don't do it. So it's like, yeah, those things you just learn each time. And then there's a bigger, now it's like, okay, we know, if it's a lot of these high end floors, if you've got $20 or $30 square foot wood floors with custom stains, like, yeah, we're gonna put, you know, we use a lot of like foil fan fold, like 1/4 inch insulation. We put that out, and then we put, you know, subfloor on top of that. We zip tape that. Like, even if somebody drops a hammer, like, those floors are going to be safe. And then it's just part of our house prep. But, not everybody does that. You get a plumber that walks in and doesn't take his boots off and tracks dirt through their house. And then you look like, the bad guy because you hired him. So there's a lot of responsibility that lands on the GC to make sure that project, is prepped for everybody.
Yeah, but essentially, as you mentioned, because the clientele you're working for is customer experience, right? And
Yeah.
that example you gave where you're taking a video and everything's going to be put in its right spot. I mean, that's why they're hiring you, the black tie group, right? That's the concierge that they want. And, that's how you appeal and build a brand by, picking up on those little things and serving
Mm,
the client. And that's what they're looking for.
100%. Yep. Yep.
So, and along in your market, and with your background, Chris, we talked about this before. Thank you for your service. As
Appreciate that.
Marine veteran there.
Yeah.
How is your military background? How has that played a role in your company and focus on life and leadership? And you know, what do you attribute now to what you learned? Your time as a Marine.
I think, attention to detail for sure. The idea of, don't not just doing something until you get it right. You just do it until you don't get it wrong. The amount of, redundancy in our training so that, it becomes muscle memory and there is no thinking. Um, I think that with, our uniforms are always very squared away. And our barracks, we had, white glove inspections just for fun. I mean, that would take a couple days. And if they found dust anywhere, like, they'd pull drawers out, flip things over. So I'm a pretty good cleaner. So I think it's, having that critical eye and just wanting things to be done right. Like, I want a clean truck regardless of the business that I'm in. Like, I want, just certain things that I like to keep well. And I think if that lends itself, to our business model and how I want things to be run, I think the other parts of the service that help me is probably dealing with the chaos, right? There's just a lot of moving parts, multitasking. I mean, I don't know if any of us are good at truly multitasking, but um, being able to think under pressure and manage expectations and not feel like things are getting out of control, you know?
Mhm.
Because we could get super stressed over every little thing, but to realize, like, that, well, this isn't the end of the world. This is still a business, although we all take it very, very, very personally. Um, and that there have been harder things we've done in our life. So we can just problem solve this. And then I think just being able to adapt and overcome things. There's just a lot of mental fortitude in the Marines where you think you're only moving, 20 clicks, and then now you're moving 25. And, like, whatever you expect it's gonna be something different. So don't get so wrapped up in this little thing, because I promise you it's gonna change. And that is construction in a nutshell.
I think that mindset is something that's often overlooked. I know we don't speak about enough in construction. I was just in the field with some of my supers, and we're out in the field, and we've all been there. I mean, there's days in construction where you're so overwhelmed. It's like, here's an issue, there's an issue, this is blowing up. As you mentioned, there may be a client or whoever that's frustrated. You may be dealing with a design
Mhm.
team member, and and so these mistakes happen. And I think every super has probably had that moment where they're just like, I could just walk off this job. I don't need this. It's like the stress is too
Yes.
much. And
Yeah.
that's where you're saying, the military background, there's no walking off really. I mean, you're committed and you're all in. And, there's part of that mental health aspect that applies into that day-to-day grind that, we live in the trades that most people that haven't done it just don't realize.
No, I think, yeah. And it's a high functioning business. And I think that's to the idea of the public's perception of construction not being professional, right? And I think that's a big push with modern craftsmen and just our industry as a whole. And I talk to my guys about that, and I talk to my clients about that. Why does a lawyer get paid for every minute that you talk to him? Why does a doctor bill you for not showing up? Like, we provide a professional service, and whether you want to look at it that way or not, that's something as an industry we need to do better. And if we want clients to look at us as professionals, then we better start acting like professionals.
Mm-hmm.
And that is some of the way that we carry ourselves, right? I mean, including, clean jeans and clean boots and just carrying yourself better as a professional, goes a long way and helps our industry when we're, seeing increased wages and cost of, building increasing. There are people out there that don't see the value. And how do we show them that, AFT and Black Tie Group are worth the money that we're, quoting them?
So what's keeping you up at night?
Ooh, usually details of projects. Sometimes, am I going to hit the numbers that I want to hit? I'd say, yeah, it's either financial or details. But yeah, the way my brain functions is I see a lot of things 3-dimensionally. So I will design a lot in those like weird hours of sleep. I don't know what you call them, but you're not asleep, but you are asleep. And I'll, wake up in the morning and call one of my leads and be like, oh, I just came up with this design. We're going to slip that over that and slide that under there. And I want this to be over here. And we'll tuck that piece of thing there and we'll hide the tile. And they're just like, what the heck? So yeah, those details will, keep me up, where I think don't want to say I'm probably too involved, but we're doing like a lighted niche on a shower right now. And it's okay. How thick is the, channel that LED strip is going to be in? And, is that marble that we're going to put on that shelf? Is that going to be recessed? And is that going to be a 1/4 inch below that? And what is all that? And did we get the wire? And then, so those things, crossing those T's and dotting those I's, I just want to make sure that they're, being done right. And the aesthetic is going to be there when we're done.
Yeah, it's incredible. Well, Chris, you've been amazing. I mean, there's so much to it. And I know we can only touch on a brief amount here in this hour, but what's upcoming and exciting for you guys? And also, what do you do for fun?
Ooh, we've got a really cool porch demo remodel as part of like an antique home that's going to have a copper roof and a bunch of skylights and some accordion windows and an indoor-outdoor fireplace that's coming up. I've got a really cool commercial remodel coming for Live Nation at our local concert venue. So I'll be posting about that coming up, but we're doing some VIP box suites with 2 bars, which are going to be really cool. I think those are my big ones on the front. For fun, I am working on getting my pilot certificate.
Oh, so good for you.
There's the flying part's fun. The studying is monotonous. It's memorizing a lot of codes and terminology, but yeah, that's been something I've wanted to do since I was a kid and just haven't financially been able to bite the bullet to do that. And in the past year, I'm like, all right, we're just gonna do it. It's gonna make it happen, no matter what.
How many hours do you have in the air?
I've got like 44, which is enough for my minimums. I've done my solos. I've done my couple, they call them cross countries, but it just means flights over 150 miles. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I have a written test and a check ride away from my certificate. So
it's incredible.
Yeah, probably a month or 2 away. I'm excited.
Oh, that's super exciting. Well,
So
good for you, Chris.
yeah,
That's incredible. What a goal. So for those listening, where can they find you?
you can find me at blacktiegroupUSA.com or black_tie_group on Instagram.
Well, Chris, appreciate you. Appreciate the friendship.
You too, man. Same thing. Thanks for having me on.
If you get value from the show, please support us by giving a 5-star rating and review on whatever platform you listen to. And I also have a favor to ask. We've had some incredible guests that come on and share their wisdom, their knowledge about their business. So if you have friends or family members that could benefit from those episodes, please share it with them, as well as any other business owners that you're networking with that could get value from the podcast or certain episodes. Please share those as well. Again, subscribe, make sure you're following. Any questions that you have, topics. We've had listeners reach out about certain guests that we should have on the show. Again, brad.l@aftconstruction.com. Email me for topics to address, guests that we should have on, and even if you think you'd be a great guest for the show. So again, thank you for all your support, and we'll see you next time.